And we'll go ahead and take a peek at the agenda to start off with. You guys get a chance to take a peek at that? If so, I'd be happy to accept a motion.
Motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Move on to the minutes.
I move that the minutes be approved as submitted.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Kind of a tie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We'll go ahead and move on to the public agenda. Scheduled items or no scheduled items that I'm aware of? Are there any off-agenda items that anybody would like to talk about? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move forward into staff reports, and Fire, you're up.
You want me to go over here?
Pretty pleased.
Okay. I don't have a whole bunch to talk about this evening. It's, I'm from Station 10 up here. I visited with you guys last time around. Been a pretty slow month, really. It's
Good.
a slow month as far as fires go. Very busy as far as medicals and other things like that, and carbon monoxide, all the other things that go on. We only had in District 1, 4 significant fires last month that were investigated, which is a good thing. Citywide, it's about normal. So we had 10 fire alarms last month, 35 service alarms, which we come out and check your carbon monoxide levels or smoke detector, something like that, and 293 medical alarms, for a total of 338 alarms. In District 1 here, we had 4 fires. One of them was, let's see here, investigations ongoing. Second, 2 more were electrical fires. One guy tried to put it out and couldn't get it done, and then one in the laundry room, had to do with laundry. So, for a grand loss sum total of $275,540, $90,000 of which were contents of the house. That's all as far as fire goes. Just, it's cold, we all know that, so be careful driving, walking around. We've had 3 people fall today, so
I bet.
that's, other than that,
Awesome. Thank
that's
you.
about it. So, thanks for having us, I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for your service. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to police report.
Hello.
Hello.
Bear with my voice, I'm getting over pneumonia.
Whoa.
Oh,
It says
man.
it'll take about 2 months to fully get it, so it comes and goes. On the police department side, we are for District 1 down in violent crimes. That is a plus. We recently talked about it a little bit, if some of you all attended the violence meeting, taking action against violence meeting. They just had the 23rd. It has been, I'm sure the weather's helping a little bit as well, which will take all the help we can get. But on the rise, we are getting killed with property crimes, meaning people breaking into cars, leaving cars running, which my lieutenant said make sure to tell them about not leaving your cars running unattended. Yes, we no longer have that city ordinance, but our auto thefts are along the property crimes, and those numbers are through the roof. So, yeah, that isn't on there anymore.
Okay.
So, if you do figure out some way to keep an eye on it or watch it, lock your doors. I've told people before with my own personal vehicle, I take the key fob off, I can start it. I got remote start now, but before that, I would start it, take the key fob off, and then once that door's shut, you can lock it with that key fob. So that'll help as well. Also, leaving items in your vehicles. The main item is bags and purses is what's being, that our number is almost doubled from the numbers last year of what we're seeing. So every item is a purse, a handbag, a gym bag, computers, stuff like that getting stolen. And that's all the way throughout the city, not just District 1. It's throughout the city. Our property crimes numbers are up.
But double.
Yeah, it's some in certain areas. Yes, it is double. One of my areas I particularly that I have is Wesley. I had 9 within 17 days, just from yesterday alone. So, other than that, knock on wood, we've been nice and quiet.
Good. Good. All right. Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Get better.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
Moving on to item number 5, library report. Do we have library here? Camila, did you want to? Okay.
All right, I'll be reporting on behalf of Ann for the library report. Upcoming library events in District 1, it says next week is spring break. Check the library's calendar for special events for kids. Emoji Emotion at the Rockwell branch on Tuesday, March 12th at 2:30. It's make emoji creations on cookies, bookmarks, and magnets. There's a wind racers at the Angelo branch on Thursday, March 14th at 2:30. It's a make Lego wind racers, pinwheels, and mini kites. Both are for ages 8 through 11. Registration is required. The library will be offering a series of gardening programs starting Tuesday, March 19th at the Rockwell branch. Summer annuals for Shade and Sun, Tuesday, March 19th, 6 through 7:30. No-till gardening, okay, so there will be no-till gardening on Tuesday, March 26th from 7:30. Again, registration is required. Finally, don't forget about the Grow with Google After Hours Computer Lab at the Angelo branch, every Monday and Thursday evening from 6 to 9 p.m. The library is closed, but the meeting room is open for after-hours computer assistance. We have library technology trainers on hand with 12 laptops and free Wi-Fi to assist customers with job applications, resumes, and internet research. And I actually went on a couple of occasions, and they're very nice technicians and ready and willing to help you. And your research can go beyond what was mentioned here. They're really just there to help you out. And it's extended hours for Angelo, so take advantage.
There we go.
And you are,
I am Tadana Neal. I am one of the library board directors for District 1.
thank you, Ms. Neal.
Very good. All right, moving on. As I understand, we do not have a park and rec report.
We do.
We do have a park and rec report. Forgive me.
We do. Well, more of a announcement, so I'll give that. I'm Brandon Johnson. So March 14th, from 1:15 to 3:45 p.m. for $5, there is a lawn mowing clinic, and that is during spring break, and it will be held here at Atwater. Check-in starts at 1 o'clock, so get here before 1:15. Again, that's $5, and you'll learn different grass types and proper care, lawn mowing safety, lawn mower maintenance, lawn mowing business basics, and make sure you register early. So now, and I'll pass this flyer around for you all to see, and we have some more copies. The deadline to register is March 14th, so you've got a few more days, but again, that is on the 14th. Check-in starts at 1 o'clock. The event is from 1:15 to 3:45. It is $5, and it's here at Atwater. Love to see this full of young people learning how to cut grass. That's something I did from 12 to 18, I think. 18, they don't really like you knocking on the door unless you got logo and all that stuff. But at 12, you can make some good money. So hopefully our young people can take advantage. Any questions, you can pass that on to Miss Angela later. But just wanted to give that announcement.
Very good. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go ahead and move into new business. Item number 7 is the scooter presentation from the Wichita Transit Department.
Okay,
She's good.
Can everyone see okay?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Good evening. I'm Scott Wadle from Wichita Transit, here to present on the scooters. So, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Whoops. Okay, so I gotta speak up. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So, first off, starting off, what we're looking, the request, the recommendation is that you endorse the concept of a pilot operating agreement with the scooter companies, and also endorse that there would be proposed changes to the municipal code in order to allow for scooters to operate in Wichita. Now, this is a little bit of an unusual or a little bit unique recommendation in that we're still in discussions with scooter companies, and there are still details to be ironed out. However, things are moving so quickly that we would like to at least get your, see what you think about the concept, and then see what also recommendations that you might have about some of the specifics. So we'll revisit the recommendation, but I always like to start out just so everyone knows kind of why I'm here and what we're looking at. So there's been a team of staff that have been working on this. This got kicked off really in November of last year. We were notified by one of the scooter companies that they were coming into town and they were going to be deploying hundreds of scooters on November 15th. And at that point, we kind of looked at each other and said, well, we've got to get cracking on this. So a team was formed, and you can see the different members here. They bring various perspectives, some with enforcement, some with regulations of the right-of-way, some with different areas where they would be utilized, et cetera. So what we then did is we got some best practices. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're also out collecting input from folks, from a variety of different folks, which is a little bit of the purpose, well, certainly the purpose tonight, but also some other meetings that we've gone to. So I'll cover e-scooters, other communities, our draft agreement, and then we'll cover the next steps. So an e-scooter, how many folks here, if you don't mind, could you raise your hand if you've used an electric scooter? Okay, so we've got, all right, very good. Okay, so we've got really more than half the board. That's fantastic. I won't go in long detail, hopefully, but it's the scooters are much like what you saw, what you've seen kids riding around on, except that these are a little bit bigger. They've got larger wheels that you can see here to make them more stable, and they're a little bit heavier because they're equipped with an electric motor. And the electric motor, in order to get them started, you have to use your cell phone. You sign up for an account online. Then you use your cell phone. You go up to a scooter, and each one will have a unique kind of a scanning code that you will scan on it with the app from the corresponding company. And then it will know that you're unlocking that one, so it'll start to charge you. Generally, it's like $1 somewhere in that ballpark to unlock it, and then it's a certain amount every minute that you're using it, right? So you unlock it, you push on it 3 times, and then after that, you actually don't have to do any work except for operating a throttle. And then you just proceed to go on your trip. You park it, you indicate that you're gonna lock it up on your app, you take a picture of it. A lot of companies require that you take a picture to show that you've parked it appropriately. And then you're off on your way and you've got a bill, and it sits locked waiting for the next user to come. Is that a pretty good synopsis so far? Okay. We can get into more details if folks have questions, but that's kind of the highlights. So in general, it's not a bicycle, it's a scooter. And it's really portrayed as a first mile, last mile solution. And in quite a few communities, we actually have heard from some folks operating transit, especially up in Kansas City, and they've indicated that the scooters have been really significant in their impact to transportation dynamics in that community. So one other thing to highlight is that the companies do have the ability through the technology, they know where the scooters are being operated, right? And I believe for quite a few of them, that's through the cell phone technology, that when you've got the app open, your cell phone is reporting where you are, similar to Uber, if you're taking an Uber ride or if you're using the bike share system. So they're able to know where the scooters are, so they can actually establish areas where the scooters will not function if you get within a certain area. And so possibilities for that are like Riverfest, for instance, and it could be a temporary thing, so they set up while Riverfest is going on. If you were to ride a scooter into the vicinity of Riverfest, it would stay within the boundaries, right? Other options are that you can set slow scoot zones, which would lower the amount of speed that you're able to travel at when you're utilizing the scooter. So we get frequent questions about that, so just want to describe that for you briefly. There's been a number of companies that have contacted us in Wichita to date. This is a list of them. The biggest one is Bird, with locations throughout the country. There's a number of smaller companies. There's really a low bar of entry to scooters right now, just because they're so they don't cost a lot. If you look at Amazon.com, you'll find like $400 for a scooter. So it's really not a high threshold here. The most recent one that we were contacted by was a company called Hellbiz. Not quite sure if we want to do business with a company called Hellbiz, but the other one is Zagster, which operates the bike share system. So they're just starting to get into scooters too. Throughout the country, there's about 60 different cities in the U.S. as of a couple months ago that had scooters operating in them. There's certainly more than 100 across the world. This is just a map to kind of give you a sense of where they're operating. The thing to note is that in Kansas, there's currently none, but they're right on the border with Kansas City, Missouri, having a company operating there, down in Oklahoma, and also in Denver, Colorado. So we're pretty much surrounded. We know it's probably just going to be a matter of time based on the markets that they're entering and based on the interest so far. So when we were contacted by the company, we got together with we hired a company to go out and do some research for us, because different cities, the scooters have come to different cities quite quickly, and so they're having to react to them in different ways. We've seen articles where cities have gone out and actually confiscated, intercepted the scooters, collected them up, and said, we don't want you to operate on our streets until we get regulations in place. There have also been places that have developed temporary regulations. There have been places that have just prohibited them outright and just said, don't even bother coming. So there's been a wide variety of different reactions. So we wanted to get a sense of, well, how do cities deal with these, right? So in the report, you'll see that there are 13 communities that are looked at. It's available at wichita.gov/scooters, so it's online. You can see all the different things that they go through, give us a sense of how other communities have handled it. The ones that the staff committee looked at were very interested by were examples from really Columbia, Missouri. And Columbia, Missouri took the example from Kansas City and then adapted it to their own needs. So it's really kind of a second or third generation agreement. So that's been the one that we've been working off of. And what you can find online is kind of our take on it. And it's a draft, again, that's put together by a committee, and we'll go through some of the more detailed specifics of that. We've also gotten a draft document from Bird themselves, and we've gotten their reaction to the one that we've put together. In addition, we've also gotten comments back from Zagster, and I believe there's another company that we're waiting for their comments to come back. So in general, about the draft pilot operating agreement, I guess the first thing to say is that it would be in duration for 1 year is what we'd like to see, because we'd like to see it for an entire year through different weather conditions, all that seasons, that kind of stuff. It would be for, we'd have a 30-day minimum notice period after that, which we could get out of the agreement, so we could cancel basically with 30 days notice. So if the scooters launch using this agreement, we find that something's not working, we can put a halt to it after 30 days and come back and revisit it. So we have freedom to make changes. The pilot one that's currently drafted would allow for multiple scooter companies. And it's interesting, there are different facets to this one. And there's some trade-offs. We heard from some of the smaller companies, we heard from Zagster at least expressed, they would be hesitant to enter into a market where more than 3 companies could operate. And the reason why is because they really see it as being a bit of a bloodbath at the beginning there, and it would be which companies could sustain the financial hit the longest that would survive. And so their strategy is to hold off and then enter into the market afterwards. It's at this point though, we felt like the community dynamics and will was probably to allow for multiple vendors, so that's what ours does allow. There's no constraint. We would require contact information to be clearly posted on the scooters and to be registered with the city, so we would know who to contact if there were issues. The initial fleet size, the pilot would require that 100 scooters would be operated by the company, so we wouldn't allow, just one or two offs. You'd have to come with a substantial amount of scooters, but would cap it at 500. And there are two, the earlier version of the pilot operating agreement had that they would require that the city would provide permission. After they provided evidence to us, the city would provide them permission to have more than 500. However, the latest draft says if they can provide evidence that the scooters are getting at least 2 trips per day, that they should automatically increase. So we'll see where we land on that one. There are requirements for data sharing. Los Angeles, City of Los Angeles, seems to be leading the way in terms of creating a base format that other cities can copy. So we're requesting that they provide that to us in that format. Obviously, we're going to require that they be well maintained. There's one thing we heard from the consultants that we work with. They said in some of the cities, the experience is that you have to test a scooter to make sure the brakes work before you use it. So yeah, maintenance is something to watch out for. And then insurance, that they would indemnify and protect the city against any legal claims. Speed is one thing that we addressed. We initially set it at 15. It was in the first draft. It's now been revised based on input to 20 miles per hour. And so these are some of the changes that have been happening. The other thing too is again highlighting that we can restrict it based on time and location, and that is written into the pilot operating agreement. That if they sign the agreement, that the city can tell them when and where they cannot operate, and they will comply with that. I guess one thing to add on to that is that the current draft, I think some of the language got a little bit backwards, but it says operate until dusk or until 9 p.m., whichever is later, and I think the language should actually be whichever is earlier, but that's currently how it's written. And I'm going through all this detail because I guess we're looking to you all for reactions. You don't necessarily have to do it as a group, but even if you want to email me with your comments or thoughts later on, that would be great. So now, again, the current pilot would not allow for them to be operated on the sidewalks, but they would be allowed to operate on the streets, in the bike lanes, and on paths. Although there's a nuance to this, in that some of the parks, their internal walkways, and the park department has said, no, let's not allow them to operate on those, but rather for the larger paths that go through, like I think K96 as it goes through some big parks, allow them there. So we'll have to get a better list from the park department, a better understanding, but we can draw that out and work with the companies on that. And then, yeah, again, this has been revised in the most recent version, which is to 9 p.m., so it should be whichever is earlier. In terms of parking, this has been a concern. I think a lot of folks have seen articles about scooter mania and like piles of scooters or blocking sidewalks. In the pilot operating agreement, we very explicitly say the things that they are not allowed to block. If it does happen, then they would receive, now the company had pushed for 6 hours. We initially said 2-hour response to get out there and address it. Now there are 2 different classifications of how the city can take action. After 48 hours, if it's not an immediate issue, like it's not blocking a sidewalk, if it's just kind of in the way but it's not impeding anything substantially. But if it's blocking pedestrian travel or presents a hazard, the city could confiscate it immediately. So it could impound it, that's the appropriate word. Now, if the city did impound it, there'd be a $32 charge per scooter. The initial draft said $32 per day, but the latest draft, based on input, is now to $32 per scooter. And the thinking is that we would impound them using staff from Wichita Transit. So currently, we're the ambassador who provides directions and guidance for folks downtown, also issues parking tickets. Well, they could confiscate the scooters and then they'd be housed at Wichita Transit, so it'd be a central location. And that there'd be administrative fee for applying for the annual operating permit of $500 to $1,000, depends on the size of the fleet. And that there'd be a general fee of 15 cents per ride on the scooters. There'd be a surcharge, essentially. And what that money could be used for is to help fund any administrative costs the city would incur, or also for infrastructure to improve conditions in places for the scooters to be operated. Now, Now, there's a number of municipal code changes that would need to take place in order to make use of scooters possible, or to more clearly define where they can and cannot be used. And it would cover these things: the sidewalks, the bike lanes, the parking, and then clearly state that we could impound, the city could impound if necessary, and that the operators must be 18 years old. And that's a standard age. The reason why that age was selected is because that's the age at which you can enter into a legal contract. And it's that's how it is with our bike share system at this point, is 18 years. So what we're doing is we've got comments from Bird. We've also got comments again from a couple companies. We're reviewing those. We'll come back with we'll update the draft. In the meantime, we're out visiting different advisory boards. So District Advisory Board 1 here tonight, 6 also tonight, Transit Advisory Board, the Park Board, and then the Bike Ped Advisory Board. So once we receive those comments, again, we'll take them back, make a revision, and then present it to the City Council for consideration. Operate it for a period of time, hopefully a year, and then work out long-term arrangements with companies. Now, if you, we've also got resources. If you want more information, wichita.gov/scooters. That's where you can see example, you can read the text for all of these. And again, the recommended action is just for you to endorse the concept of a pilot operating agreement and possible changes to the municipal code. And then any and all feedback that you have would be wonderful.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Board, do you have any questions?
Scott, I read the draft, and it said that the downtown city core would be the pilot program operating area. Are there discussions to expand that to include maybe, east, the Douglas Design District or Delano? I think, operating that for a year, just the downtown core.
Yeah. Actually, there's been a recent development with the drafts, with so many different departments coordinating on this one. There's been some tweaks. And one of the things that's in here now, which wasn't in a previous draft, is, I believe it's under, it's under section 7, under operating regulations. And it says, without written consent of the city, scooter deployment will be limited to no more than 250 scooters in the downtown core area. And it defines the core area as like Washington, Central, Kellogg, and the river, right? So what it's doing is it's limiting the amount, and it's the language there is not very clear about it. Is it 250 per company, or is it 250 total? So I'm really interested to get your feedback on that. Yeah, it's Washington, Central to the north, the river over to the west, and then Kellogg to the south. So it's actually not, it's not limiting where they could go in terms of being distributed across the city, but what it's saying is you can't have more than 250 in a specific area. Now, one of the things that's interesting about that is when you think about where most of the scooters going to be used, where would you anticipate the most scooter use? You've got Old Town is covered in there, downtown is covered in there, the arena, the transit center, those kind of things. So I think that that's an area for debate and discussion about what's the best fit for our community. Yeah.
So the operating area would just not be limited to just the downtown core?
That's right, that's right. It'd be open. And I think what we would see is scooters, they'll be placed in places where they're most likely to be used. And we're going to learn a lot really quickly about where they are and aren't being used. The other thing, too, is some cities have set up kind of like equity distribution, and they require that scooter companies distribute some of the certain percentage of the scooters in certain areas based on demographics, or including demographics, but also on transportation patterns and economics. So, yeah.
Thanks.
One of my concerns would be, I saw you said that they're looking at allowing them in the street.
Uh-huh.
And then you said bike lanes, probably using the bike lanes as well. I'm just thinking of safety when it comes to using a scooter in the street for 20 miles per hour. Cars not paying attention or what have you. Was that some discussion when you guys were thinking of where, they could operate these scooters, or whether it's in the street or whether in the bike lane.
Yeah.
I would prefer to see most of them in some type of particular bike lane or some type of reserved lane or something. I know that would probably take much more work, but, I don't know, for myself, first thing that comes to my mind when I see somebody on the scooter in the street is just safety parameters. You said you guys talked to Kansas City?
No, we really just, we looked at their policies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's something else I would just suggest is to kind of see, cause do they allow the scooters in the street as well, or?
I don't recall offhand, but I do want to say from the report that we looked at that a large number of them do restrict them off of sidewalks, and so do encourage them to actually use the bike lanes and the streets. That's been more common than allowing them on the sidewalks. Now, there's a challenge here, and there was pretty robust debate in the staff committee on this, because if we prohibit them on the sidewalks like a lot of communities do, well then how do you enforce it if you do find them on the sidewalks, right? And how much time are you gonna spend on that? But at the same time, that's balanced by the pedestrian safety of something going, 15, 20 miles an hour on the sidewalk, which we know in bicycling leads to crashes because you're traveling faster than a pedestrian. So motor vehicles aren't expecting you something that fast on the sidewalk. It also could lead to some issues with pedestrians if they're, walking and they get buzzed by a scooter. So it's one that I think a lot of cities are wrestling with right now. And I think, just like you said, with bike lanes and other facilities that are dedicated to these bikes and different types of vehicles, I think that's the solution that a lot of communities are looking at. It's just a matter of how fast can you update your infrastructure to reflect the new transportation mode.
So I was reading online, these are a really big thing in California. And one of the big issues is that you require that you be 18 years of age to operate. However, there are many young people that could rely on this service for many things. Transportation to schools being one. Getting around the city during the summer being another thing. When big events are going on, like you talked about Riverfest. Is there any way to get around this 18 years of age requirement, or have you found that that's not been the case?
Well, I don't know that there's not any ways to get develop a solution to allow for that. But I'm not aware of any offhand. And I think a lot of it also rests with the companies about how much they're willing to extend their contracts to and liability and those kind of things. So it's a challenging issue, but I do think that it's one that will be addressed eventually through these systems, whether it's bike share scooters, because there is that market that's there.
Right.
It's just a matter of how do you catch up, how does the legal framework and other things catch up to it.
Makes
And there was robust discussion among the staff group, and it was really interesting to see, because the younger staff were like, this is great, we need to do this. Do we need to have this age restriction there? So I'll take that comment back with me when I provide the feedback to folks, but.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So how's the infrastructure in Wichita for bike lanes citywide?
Citywide, well, we have over 100 miles of bikeways, including the paths and the lanes. But how is it in terms of connectivity? I guess what I'll do is I'll dodge it just a little bit, and I'll say one of the projects that we're working on right now is the downtown streets conceptual design, because the project downtown recommended it recommended streets that are more pedestrian friendly, and in order to provide an opportunity to look at it as a network instead of just one street at a time, we're undertaking this project in partnership with WAMPO. They provided 80% of the funding for us to do this project. And it's going to be an opportunity to look at how does the network of downtown streets all function, and what modes and what types of uses should be accommodated there. So I'm really hoping that we can get some good guidance and consensus on how our streets can be transformed to provide those facilities for this. Now, so jumping back a little bit, and I think your question was also about citywide. It really varies according to where you are, right? And in terms of bicycling and scooter use, on a neighborhood street, you're probably going to be okay. It's just a matter of what do you do when you get to an arterial or a really busy street, right? How do you get across it? And we're coming up with solutions to that. I wouldn't say that we're to the point where we're doing, like we've nailed it and we're just gonna repeat this solution of different places. I think we're still at that stage where we're kind of learning and figuring it out, but it's getting better. But we're not there where I would confidently say that you can get everywhere quite yet.
James?
Yeah, you mentioning about unlocking and locking these scooters. Would that have to be done at a docking station?
Good question, yeah. So there are different requirements by different cities. Some cities and some companies, regardless of what the city does, require the users to return, or in some cases it's a fee incentive where you pay more if you don't return a scooter to this location. But they set up painted areas that are designated for scooters. They got like a little, they use a spray painted scooter symbol to indicate this, right? And you can look it up on the phone. And like Bird uses called bird cages in the cities where that's required. So you can set up these areas where the scooters are required to be distributed to and where the trip should end. It's just a matter of whether or not we want to do that. And there's been some pretty good debate about that because part of the advantage of the scooters is that they're easily available, right? You can walk out the door of a business or a place where you're visiting and you see one, you grab one and off you go. And then how convenient could you set up those bird cages, so to speak? So there's going to be a balance here, and that's the great thing about the pilot program is it gives us an opportunity to explore it, see how it's working, and set those up, require those if we need to. But at the get-go, right now, it doesn't recommend that. So if that's something you want, you need to let me know.
And also, at the docking station, would these scooters have to be plugged in to be recharged?
Oh, yeah. So what happens with the scooters, there's really two different models that we've heard about. So there are companies that hire staff and they have a warehouse and they'll go out and they'll collect them and they'll take them back to the warehouse and service them and they'll charge them because they do have to be charged, I think, every night basically, depending on the amount of use that they're getting. Now, there are other companies, though, scooter companies, what they do is they basically allow you to sign up to collect it and to charge it, and they give you either money or credits to use the scooters. And so, like in college towns, there's really entrepreneurial students who are using dorms to like plug in tons of scooters. But in any case, they're just different business models that work. Yeah. So, but they do have to be charged, and if the battery dies on them, they're heavy enough to where it's not really convenient for you to ride it for a long period of time, for like a mile, a half mile, or anything. I mean, you're really not going to make it more than probably 20 feet, just because it's so big.
Any other questions? I've got just a couple, or just comments anyway. This has the potential, in my mind, to go ahead and improve the public transportation as well, especially if you actually have some of these scooters at the end of bus routes. You can increase your range significantly with this. So this is kind of a neat concept. I have a request that at least the reporting feature actually be put onto the city app, so that in the same way that we go ahead and report potholes and that type of stuff, you could actually say, this thing's blocking my drive, or got thrown in the river, or whatever it is, who knows.
Okay.
And you'd mentioned about the number of downtown 250 in total or whatever. I have no idea. I take your guys' recommendations, so that's just my 2 cents. Any other questions or comments from the public?
You say you're not sure about 250, that you think that might be a high number?
No, I have no idea if that's a good number or not. I'm just saying I'd take staff's recommendation. So, any questions? Go ahead.
So are they gonna be on college campuses? Where is, I got it from later.
Sure. No, Jane.
Pilots?
That was actually going to be up to the different schools. Well, especially for WSU because that's on state property. For the other ones, they would be in the city of Wichita. So, but except that this is really for use in the right of way, so the public spaces. On private property, it's an entirely different deal. So if they wanted to, make an agreement with them or confiscate them, I mean, that's private.
You know, just while I'm talking, tomorrow at noon, let's see, Wednesday at noon, WSU is gonna do its ribbon cutting on its bike share stations. There will be 4 stations. Just, I was thinking about it, sir. They should all be lined up, bikes, scooters.
So just to be sure, just make sure the operating boundaries have not been defined, it's all citywide.
That's correct. Yep, citywide is the, and you can read, that's actually in the operating agreement. Yep.
Very cool.
Where did you get that 250 number?
That is, well, it's a little bit new to me, so I'm not really sure the background behind it. So that's something that I'll have to explore with some of the other staff that have been working on this draft.
250 would be nothing in downtown Kansas City, and here it's reported.
Okay. Yeah.
Way too many.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Forgive me.
Okay, I'm confused. You talked about boundaries of Washington, Central, Kellogg, and the river. But, so I thought that was where you could ride the scooters, but are you saying that that's where, the places where you can pick up the scooters?
Oh, good.
Or you can ride them anywhere?
Yeah, no, good clarification, So, at this point, the pilot operating agreement would allow them to operate anywhere in the city of Wichita. So they could distribute them, they would just be anywhere within the city boundaries. However, the current draft that's currently posted would restrict scooter companies from having more than 250 in the downtown area, so that area bounded by Washington, Central, the river, and Kellogg. Does that help? So you could operate, they could be distributed or operated anywhere in the city, but in this particular area, no more than 250 in this current draft.
Is there a battery meter on there? Like, you talking about riding it anywhere you want to, you get out and
Get stuck.
somewhere and you got like 10% of battery.
Yeah, I'm
carrying it.
pretty sure that there is. I'm sorry, I'm just not familiar enough with them, but I'm pretty sure there is. I'll defer to the others who have used them.
Very good.
Why didn't you bring one for us to test out?
We have been talking to the company, it's like, come on, can't we just borrow one for a little while?
They'll test it on the ice.
That's right. Very good. Any other questions, comments? Any other questions you have of us based off of the input you've?
No, I've gotten a little bit, the thing is, I've got some of your comments here. Without a vote of the DAB, I'll take it as individual comments, not necessarily the consensus of the DAB, but it's gonna be very helpful for us, because we'll look to see what other comments we receive from other boards and kind of what the consensus tends to be, or if there's any themes. And then if you all endorse the concept of it and the possible changes to the municipal code, then that would be helpful, and we just take it back saying, we know we're heading in the right direction, but we still have some things to hammer, to negotiate and figure out. But the next step would be, unless you would like to hear it again, our next step would probably be to take it to the city council, just to kind of keep things moving, because we know the warm weather's coming, and we know the scooter companies have a reputation of just dropping scooters.
Well, to be fair, I mean, your request is to go ahead and ask us to endorse the program. With that said, with all the conversation, yep, I'd be happy to accept one.
A motion to recommend the endorsed pilot program concept as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay warm.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Moving on to item number 8, Wichita Places for People. 3 neat meetings in a row.
Yeah, good topics. Yeah. This one too.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Hunt, and I am with the Metropolitan Area Planning Department. And for almost 3 years now, we have been working on this plan, which is longer than I've worked for the city. And we had a group called the Urban Infill Advisory Committee that ended up producing this document, which is online. The map in front of you, the big map, has the website for where this is located. This all came about because in 2015 and 16, the city adopted a comprehensive plan. It's called the Community Investment Plan. And one of the action steps of that plan, and those plans are like 20-year plans, was to develop this. And this is addressing roughly a good 40% of the middle of the city, okay? So that group alone met for 25 months and came up with this document, and then there was a lot of work before they can do it. So I'm gonna try and take you through this. Okay, the whole purpose of this was to create a connected, accessible community. And I'll be honest with you, the money that paid for this came from the federal government and had to do with walking. So it was creating walkable places. And it does a lot more than that, but that's where the money came from, so we talk about walkability a lot. We wanted it to help make our neighborhoods stronger, have some active centers, and putting people first rather than automobiles. It doesn't exclude automobiles, it's just, it gives a little more even playing field to all types of transportation. We developed this so we could advance our economy, and I like to talk about this offering a different product. Right now, if you want a 2,000 square foot home on a cul-de-sac, we've got lots and lots and lots of that for sale, all over. But if that isn't to your liking, it's pretty limited sometimes what you can find. And so that's what this area is gonna work on. It works on our more established areas of the community, and it's offering a different product. One of the examples I give is, I think back 100 years ago when they developed Coca-Cola. Well, Coca-Cola does a whole lot more than just Coke Classic. Okay, it's a food business, it's a beverage business, and you have to diversify to stay competitive. We're using it to revitalize our community, taking better care of what we already have instead of building new, focusing on our established neighborhoods and all that existing infrastructure. We have water, we have sewer, we have power. That's all there, it all has to be maintained, so we want to get more out of it. And then the plan really tries to address the regulatory barriers. Many of the things we want to do in this plan right now are illegal, according to our zoning regulations. So one of the big parts of this, one of the big to-dos that you have to do is redo your zoning regulation. And we'll talk about that later on. Okay. So the area that we're looking at, the very top, that is about 29th Street. The very bottom is 31st Street. And then we have Ridge Road on the far west, Rock Road on the east. And what this map is talking about, and I think your map, you can see it better there, this kind of lavender color, those are areas that are a little more stable. We call this area the established central area, okay? And that lavender area, it's a little more stable. And then the gold areas need just a little bit more help. They're actually older areas. And again, your map is much better than this one. All those dots are talking about where we might do this. And they tend to be intersections throughout the city. There are very neighborhood level dots, which means that little development there would be on a very small scale. We have medium, and then we have a few, I think we have 6 of these very large dots. Those are things at both of our malls on the east and west side, hospitals, university, things like that. Those are huge employers, and those areas will be much bigger. Just some quick facts that they came up with when they drafted this. The area is 62 square miles, so it's 38% of Wichita. It's more than half of our residents, and consequently, it's more than half of our households. It has 2/3 of all our jobs, and it has slightly less than half of all the retail sales. And that's because of the retail spreading out on the edges. That kind of brings that down below what it might have been. So we're trying to identify those places where cars, buses, pedestrians, scooters, bicyclists can coexist. And so we established these places, and all of those dots are designated as places. And a place is it's a plaza, it's a park, it's a street, waterfronts that attract people. When you get there, you know you're there. We've arrived. Oh yeah, we're here. You go to Old Times and yeah, we're here. And you know when you leave it. Those are places. And a sense of place is a characteristic. It might be natural like our river, or it may be constructed like Old Town. And it's a location that's readily recognizable as unique. Okay. So here we're talking about where. These are the little dots. There's about 24 of them. Can you hear me when I step away like that? There's about 24 of them. We all know not all of these will get built. These are just suggestions where there's a lot of potential. And this is on the small scale, very much the neighborhood level. Okay, so that's a small place, and in the plan, it's called a neighborhood hub. This listing up here, 17th and Hillside, which is very close to here, is one of those, 13th and Broadway, Central and Oliver, etc. It tends to be located at an intersection, but it's only a couple of blocks. You might have 40,000 square feet of commercial space, and it has maybe a 1.5 mile trade area. So here we are, here's an example. Now they did a rendering of this. And there's the intersection on the right here, you've got the university. But what they've done is basically they tighten up the building development right around that corner, get some density going there so you can support transit, and then as you go out, it calms down. And eventually you get out to just single family homes, okay? This is on a small scale. Here's a little rendering of what that intersection might have looked like, or one like it. You can see how pedestrian access, very pronounced. There's room for bicycles with the bike paths, things like that. So here's the same rendering looking into that L-shaped building. And this is what happens when things are designed and the car doesn't dominate everything. Everybody can coexist. Yes, they'll have to slow down when they get to this part. I wish this picture were brighter. What we have here is, I was telling you about, the center is very dense. That's what that purple in the middle is. And then it spreads out. It gets a lighter shade of purple, and that's that transition area from high density to low density. And then it goes out where that circle is, and that's where it just sort of falls off into your strictly residential areas. same intersection. This is showing kind of building placement. Again, high density in the middle, and by high, when you're talking about a neighborhood, you might have 2 to 3 stories. We're not talking skyscrapers here. This is the transportation network, different types of streets for different areas within that little hub. And then some of the green space that could be there to support it and break up all the hardscape like buildings and such. This is medium size. Okay. Not as many, but still quite a few. These are the medium places called community cores. Harry and Oliver, the Delano district is a real common one, 21st and Amadon. This will be located at maybe 1 or 2 intersections, 6 to 12 blocks, more commercial space, and it's not just retail, it can be offices and such, and maybe has a 4 to 6 mile trade area and needs about 50,000 people to support it. And so here's Harry and Oliver. It has the Clap Golf Course there on the left, and that's up for discussion right now. But again, that center core is more highly built up, but it's bigger. And then it spreads out to that transition area and out, it's just a larger space. Then here's a nice rendering. You see the buildings have now 3 stories, quite a few of them. There's a plaza over here on the right. A little more activity on this one. A little more hustle bustle. And I'm really sorry these photos just aren't rich enough for this bulb here. It's just washing it right out. Again, building placement as it spreads out to the residential areas. Street network. Green spaces. And then the biggest one, these are large. We only have 6 of these throughout the area. The one up here in the upper right, of course, is the university. And they're called regional centers. So we have Old Town, the university, the malls, Central and Hillside certainly does. And look at that, the number of blocks it takes up is enough. It's doubled again. It needs more than 200,000 square feet of commercial space, multiple anchors, and a big trade area. It takes about 100,000 people to support this. So we have about 400,000 in our community, so we're not gonna get 6. We'll be lucky to get 2. But what it'll do is it'll pull economic activity back into the center of town. And we picked Maple and West, and I guess this is not a great picture, but Maple and West is that mall out west, and it doesn't really have an intersection. So its center area is how they break up that massive block of building and turn it into a walkable place. This would be a big challenge, but that mall is not the most active place in there. Here's an example of what could be there. Again, you got look like warehousing over here. It's near all the industrial areas south of Kellogg. Yet it can still be walkable. Uh-huh. So I've gotten through those 3. Again, look how, this is how big that center area is with that dashed line across there. Building lineup, how they might use what they have, but also add. Transportation networks, and then parks. So I'm gonna pause here for a second, because this plan has a lot in it, just to see, have I explained the concept of this plan, about pulling things into the city, instead of just constantly doing more and more on the edge. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, 17th and Hillside,
Uh-huh.
you showed buildings, and where are these buildings coming from? Who's gonna own these buildings? What are you
Yeah.
envisioning?
Well, what we're envisioning is one of probably the single most important action step of this plan is that we adopt a parallel zoning code. Now, they've made other recommendations in here on how we might make this happen, but part of it is just, people come into town and want to develop something. But the regulations we have can be so onerous, because what they're wanting to build is not what's on, off on Greenwich or, Maze Road, okay, Maze. And they have to go through such a convoluted, experience of trying to build what they want, because we have a zoning code that's designed for suburbia. So what we're interested in doing now, and this is, staff is kind of leaning towards this right now, is a parallel zoning code. And allows people to get in because time is of the essence for a developer. They can't spend a year and a half just trying to get the regulations mapped out.
So, okay, so part B, do you have some businesses in mind that you are envisioning on 17th and Hillside in that core area?
Do I have anything specifically? No, we leave that to the development community.
So is the city gonna, try to get developers to go in that particular area? I mean, do you know that there's a market to develop that area?
Well, because people are knocking on our door periodically asking about the kind of things we're talking about here. We know it works in other cities.
So there is interest in that
There
area?
is interest, yeah. I had a guy from Oklahoma City call. He called when this was still pretty fresh, pretty new, and it wasn't complete. And he says, well, keep us updated on what you're doing, because we kind of like what you're doing up there. And he made reference to some other place. He said, no, they're behind you. And so, again, we don't know that that's the intersection they'll select.
Oh, so we're not, so these are concepts or anticipation.
Yes, this is an amendment to the comprehensive plan. This is not a development plan,
Sure.
with somebody coming in and saying, we want to go here. That's far more detailed. This is conceptual, because that's what a comprehensive plan is. It's conceptual. It's like you're on a ship and you're trying to figure out, are we going to San Diego, are we going to Hawaii, are we going to Seattle?
But to your point, almost all of these spots are basically at primary intersections. So we're just, all we're talking about doing is actually doing a revamp of the code for intersections.
Well, and some other regulations too, sure.
What other regulations are you?
Well, we'll get to that, but
Oh.
the
Sorry.
big one that's been, that has been on the table for a long time was, accessory dwelling units. Right now, you can build an accessory dwelling unit if you have a lot, it's reasonable size, but you don't have that, you don't have it by right. You have to go through this process, this conditional use process. And a lot of cities are making them by right. Minneapolis, God, they don't even have a single family home, zoning designation anymore. They just passed that. So lots of cities, now a lot of cities that are doing that because they have affordability problems. But, we're interested in doing it because we want people to live here.
Sure.
And again, it's offering a different kind of product and making it easier for a homeowner to do that. Often if they're willing to do that, they can offset the cost of their own home.
Yeah.
Is that like the storefront downstairs in your home, upstairs? What do you say, accessory
Well,
dwelling unit? Can you
those-
define accessory dwelling unit?
Yeah, that is not an accessory dwelling unit, but that's what's called live-work units.
Oh, okay.
Where somebody has a business, might be an insurance business, it might be a bakery, it could be anything, on the first level in a commercial area, but they live upstairs.
So then what is accessory?
An accessory dwelling unit is a separate little house in your backyard.
Mini house for the
They're called
father-in-law.
branded flats.
The mother-in-law house?
A mother.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
They, oh dear. Okay. They can actually be attached, which doesn't really make sense, does it?
Yeah.
In our code right now, we call them accessory apartments, but they're not an apartment either. But they can be attached to your house if that's the way your lot comes out, but it can also be separate. And, they'll have people that'll have, they have a disabled child who's an adult now. They're semi-independent, but not 100%. Or they have, an elderly parent
Yep.
who still wants some privacy. Or you've got a kid in graduate school who just needs to hunker down, or they just wanna rent it out.
Cool.
Shall I continue? Okay. Okay, so what makes up these places? They're made of buildings, they're made of streets and sidewalks, and then open space. These are different kinds of buildings, and oh gosh, they come out bad. You got a detached house with that garage poking out to the front, that's what you have out in the suburbs. You have a detached house in a neighborhood where the garage is back. That's the kind of house I grew up in, but it was built in '59, okay? The garage is not the predominant feature facing the street.
Right.
It also probably has a shallower front yard. This thing over here is just a two-story detached house. Then we get into a duplex, and oh boy, can't you just tell what an accessory dwelling unit is? But that thing in the back, those are the little houses that are back there. People have these deep backyards. They might even have an alley across the back.
Yep.
Okay, then you have a multi-unit house, and they just get bigger and bigger. Small apartment building. What changes here from the row house to the small apartment, the row house has individual entrances. The apartment buildings now have a common lobby. And the higher density, that's right, the higher density units are closer to that core. Again, high-rise apartment complex. Then we get into, commercial. Here's the live-work unit, okay? Business on the first floor, somebody living upstairs, or it could just be any type of mixed use. It doesn't have to be residential. Small-scale commercial, we have a lot of this in, Delano, except that they don't have the windows on the side. They're just one building after another. Medium-scale mixed use, see a lot of that in Old Town. Large scale, it's just getting higher up. Then we have this drive-through building, like a drive-through restaurant or bank, but they pulled the glass up near the sidewalk. Again, the drive-through is not the defining feature of that building, okay? Then we have our large industrial or big box, and then of course a parking garage. And the advantage of a parking garage is that everybody shares that instead of trying to put all this on-site parking with their little business, okay? And what happens is it defines the streetscape. You're driving down, you're walking down, you're biking down the street, and it's parking, 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 parking. The car dominates everything. And the thing is, we have the infrastructure in this established central area already that works with this. And this is really what's happening. On the left is a building. Then you have this frontage zone, which is the entrance into the building. You have your pedestrian zone. You have your amenity zone, and it's more than just trees. It could be park benches. It could be trash cans. It could be wayfinding, signs and stuff so you can find your way around. And then the curb zone. Then we finally hit the area where the cars are. And what's happening is all of this is working together. They're not separate from one another, they work together.
In most of our developments we have, like in Delano, do we have enough of that space right now to have those different zones, or is it more compact? And this is, our plan here is to make sure that in future developments we have this area? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, Delano has it.
Oh, they do?
Delano
Okay.
has it, yeah. It's still identified because it has a ways to go, but it's one of the more successful, stable areas. And it's a great example for people that say, I don't really understand what you're talking about, Mary. And you go down there and you see this medium-sized development where cars slow down when they're going through. They just do, because there's so much to look at. And there's all these windows with things happening in there. Anyway, it goes on and on. These are the frontage types. You remember I was telling you about that house with the garage poking out? Well, that's a suburban type house. it's further back from the street than, say, the one next door. The one next door here in the middle, the garage is in the back, okay? This type here, where the homes are all in a row, they're built pretty close to that street with the parking in the back. Again, more frontage types. This is a courtyard where the defining feature when you're going down the street, it's the landscaping out front and it leads your eye down the center to all of those courtyard homes. And then we have terrace, and we have this is more of a commercial thing where they've got parking all around, but again, we've got landscaping on the front, and that's what kind of defines the picture going down that street. And I promise you, if you look at this online, you'll see some really nice renderings. But this is a picture of Delano, and they have a rendering of something that looks like it. Okay, gets a little bit busier here. I think this is Oliver, the photo. Then we get to a local street. I think that's Salina. Anyway, and then we have a picture of Old Town and a rendering like that. I mean, Old Town is a place where they don't even have the curbs. And then we have what's called active alley. And these are areas between buildings that really are just an alley, but you can make use of them for dining and entertainment and all of that. And then we go through streets and sidewalks. Remember I was talking about the amenity zone? Here's a photo of a map. It's not intruding on the sidewalk, okay? People can still go as they like along the sidewalk, but they've got this thing tucked into a nice landscape area, and it's planning for that. Look at how nice and deep that one there, a dedicated bike lane, but it's pretty far away from the pedestrian. This is more of a suburban street. They've got a sidewalk there on the right, but they don't even have curb and gutter here, so they've got swales to handle stormwater. And then we've got an elevated crosswalk where that woman is running. She's at a higher level than the cars. And that, they drive there, up, and then down, it slows them down. And just some other examples here. Street furniture, bus stop. This one was interesting because where the guy in the green is, that's just a sidewalk. And then there's landscaping, and then there's the bike lane, then there's landscaping, and then you finally get to the cars. So everybody feels real safe in there. Again, just some other examples of separating the parked car from the bench. Again, plenty of sidewalk area here, if they're still outside dining. And then they talk about plugging in some open space. This one here on the left is just green space. It's just a buffer between different kinds of uses. Nobody goes out there and play except for maybe a dog. And then you have the one along the river here, different types of green space. You've got your regular community park, and you've got your neighborhood park, which will have playground equipment typically. And then you have small little pockets where you've got a little square in the middle, just some green space to kind of provide some relief. And then this is just a courtyard type feature. So recommendations, the big one, the zoning code. Accessory dwelling units by right. These are some of the recommendations the consultant made. Eliminate the density cap. One of the things we have on density is that our laws keep spreading things out further and further and further from each other. And what are you gonna do inside the established central area? Are you gonna buy 3 lots to build? I mean, that makes no sense. So eliminate the density cap, put appropriate limits on the building scale, use the building type standards that are in here, and we design for human scale development and relate those buildings to the streetscape. On commercial, we want to look at changing the required setbacks, and I'll tell you, we don't know what this zoning code's gonna look like. They made some recommendations, but really what it's saying is you must look at your zoning code and get something different going. That's the recommendation here. But they did give us some ideas, some limits on building scale, having multiple small-scale projects are better than one large, single-use project. And again, designing for the human-scale development. We have it inside the zoning section of this, and this plan, by the way, is set up in books. We have the vision book, the development book, the zoning book, the investment book. They're all separate, and I've really been only talking about the development up until now. But parking standards, that's another big one. Remove the parking from the front of the property. Sometimes I think of it as, would you put, if you bought a new hot water heater or a new furnace, would you put it in your front yard and call it yard art? I mean, you would not do that. It's in the basement where, you know, where it belongs. It's not pretty. So it's removing parking from the front, maybe tiny amounts of parking out front on the larger developments, depending if it's a node or the transition area or out on the edge. Again, more recommendations. Here's where the consultant said we could do walkable development standards as an option. We could allow it in specific locations, or we could require it in certain specific places, or require it based on a plan. So we definitely have a lot to do, but we do know that we probably need to do accessory units by right. Another idea came up was, it's unusual for a city like ours not to have this already, but is establishing a land bank. We have a lot of property out there that nobody knows who owns it. Somebody out in Idaho inherited it, they don't want it. Someone has passed away, there are no heirs, and there's no way for anybody to buy it. Or if they did want to buy it, they have to go through so much trouble to buy that thing, because now they have to pay how many years of back taxes? The property just isn't worth it. What a land bank does, it can acquire and hold those distressed properties. This isn't about taking somebody's property who wants it and, you know, lives there and has plans for it. This is the stuff that just sits there forever. Abandoned and foreclosed property. A land bank is a separate entity, so it can develop a plan to reuse that property. It's created by a city ordinance, and again, it's managed by an independent agency. You guys interrupt me anytime. Then we have our usual stuff, our TIFs, our SIDs, our bids. These are things that are already in place today. And we can do tax reductions, things like that, tax credits, low interest loans, things like that. Okay. It's a lot. Let me tell you something. Our planning commission has been involved with this, just the plan part, for over 2 years. And even they said, you have to come back and give us a recap. And that took an hour and a half. And these are people that have been working with this all along for those 2 years, or at least many of them have been. So when I toss it out there at somebody for the first time, I know it can be overwhelming. We are, just like Scott, are looking for, you know, your blessing on this at some point. First time out, you may not say, oh, we're gonna be ready, we need to be looking at this. Or we need to chop it up into smaller pieces and give it that way. But ultimately, in order to get it passed, we would need to go to all of the DABs and do this. So, anyway, any questions?
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, you bet. Joseph?
With the, what's the, how did you know my name? With the land banks, how can you ensure that the communities that you're wanting to put those land banks in have say in what goes there, so we can ensure things like gentrification don't take place, but we're actually putting things in there that benefit the community that it surrounds?
Yeah. Land banks are created by a city ordinance, so the city drafts its own regulations. It decides who's gonna be on that board making decisions. It's gonna have a scope of what they may do and what they may not do. Okay, and so we'd have to study them from a lot of places, but it really is just mostly abandoned property.
They're already zoned for certain
I'm sorry,
They're already zoned for certain purposes.
they are, yeah,
You can't change that without changing the zoning.
I couldn't hear you.
You can't change that without changing the zoning, so it is protected, correct?
What do you mean?
Well, if they're, the land bank only gathering the property, they're not changing the property.
They're not changing it, no.
Right.
No, but once they acquire it, the land bank owns it, and they can do what any owner would do. They can demolish the property, they can rehab it, they can rezone it if that's what's needed,
Right.
you know, just like any owner
But
could
through
do.
the same process we already have.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You bet. Anybody else? Yeah.
I went to one of the early urban infill
Mhm.
meetings, and at that meeting, they talked about things that communities needed, and what was missing, and I didn't see any of that in this presentation.
No, you didn't see everything. I really had to cook this down to the development book, pretty much.
Okay.
I mean, that's in here, and if you remember early on when I said, well, the lavender areas are the more stable areas, and the gold areas were, areas of opportunities that they refer to it, they have a whole chart in here on, areas that are really stable. I think of like Rock Road, I mean, who needs to help Rock Road? But, other areas need help with real community development, and that is whether it's job training and all of that kind of thing. And you just have to pour more resources into certain areas, because they've been neglected longer.
Cause I know a lot of different areas talked about food deserts and grocery
Mhm.
stores, and how do those things fit into this? It doesn't at this point?
Not specifically, although I will tell you, council person came to me about a food policy for the city. So I think that's it's not gonna be driven by, Metropolitan Area Planning Department, but, because you really need to have, somebody with a public health background really driving something like that. So I think the why is gonna be driving that. But yeah, that could definitely be a component in certain areas.
Last thing,
Uh-huh.
you had WSU up there, what, WSU isn't distressed, I mean,
No, but it's a driver, it's an economic development driver. And so areas around it should be flourishing because of that. Yeah.
Can you revisit the definition of accessory unit? What did you
An
mean by
accessory dwelling unit?
Dwelling unit.
Yeah, an accessory dwelling unit is a separate home on a piece of property. You have your primary home, somebody lives there, or they've rented it out,
Okay.
and then they have a separate, home, normally in the back.
Okay.
And, what makes it different is that you cannot subdivide that land between the accessory unit and the primary. The accessory unit is subordinate to the primary, okay? And whoever owns that owns both, and they're responsible for both, versus somebody, subdividing into condominiums or something, okay?
So when you
What
say
would-
AUD right, how does that fall into that?
Well, once, the parameters are designed as to what size lot you have to have this. And what should the setbacks be? If you meet that, you don't have to go to the planning commission and the city council to ask for permission. If it's determined, yep, yours will fit there, have at it, and now you're going to the building department and start pulling building permits when you're ready.
Just a follow-up to it, so what would be, as we talk about the broad spectrum of this, what would be the benefit of that? You have a single-family dwelling unit, you build another little structure in the back, what are the benefits in the broad spectrum? How does that?
Well, first of all, if you decide to rent out that unit, that person is better able to afford the home they have. All right, they've got an income stream coming from, without taking in a boarder, okay? But also, if you have an elderly parent, and you need to be near them, but not living together, that's another option for you.
From a city
And it
perspective.
oftentimes offers someone who's renting it a more affordable way of living. And you can limit the size of them. A lot of places limit it at about 800 square feet. They really are kind of a tiny house, but not a tiny home development.
But from a development, from a city perspective, part of the goal there is to try and get more people in the town rather than go into the suburbs.
That's right.
So, yep.
And affordable housing.
Right.
Yes.
So as far as the majority of this area that we're talking about is central to the city.
Yes.
Most of the area probably doesn't actually have neighborhood covenant restrictions, but you may actually get some of that out on the fringe. Where you have situations where neighborhoods already have covenant restrictions, how do those play together if the city would just go ahead and say, yep, you have the ability to do the ADUs?
Right, well, homes associations aren't really connected to anything the city does. We don't implement, we do not
Right.
enforce them.
Right.
But if a homes association says we don't want accessory dwelling units, but that's the way it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, and I will tell you that boundary, after going through this process, people that established that boundary wished it had been pulled in a little bit, maybe not north-south, but east-west, a little bit. But there's a very good chance this sort of thing might not happen on the edge anyway.
Sure. I really like the idea to try and go ahead and change some of the zoning to bring more investment in. The ADUs, I think, is a fantastic thing. I'd be completely in favor of the concept of a land bank to try and help speed some of the change of hands into more productive use. Any other questions here from the board, comments? If not, we'll go ahead and take it out to the community.
Parallel zoning,
Yeah,
what the heck is that?
it'd be two zoning codes. You'd have the zoning code that we have today,
Yeah,
and then you have this other zoning code, and if your property is within this established central area, this study area, you get to pick which one you wanna go by. So if you're doing the kind of things that we're proposing in here, we're gonna make that approval process faster, okay? If you want the old zoning, if you want the old one where it takes a minimum of 90 days to get through the process, then the answer might be no, okay? You're welcome to it.
so you're coming in wanting to do some building, you study the zoning codes and decide which one you want to use?
Yeah. But you know, you have developers up there, they're very familiar, or they hire people that are very familiar with all of it.
Yeah.
They can help advise them on what to do. Jane?
You got money from the feds to do this walkable.
Yeah, transportation money, yeah.
You get money from the feds to implement any
No.
part of it?
Well, not yet. I mean, if we can identify, some money to help us with the zoning code, that would be really helpful, because that's gonna take a long time.
And the zoning code, how complicated is that to change? I mean, there are lots of codes.
Yes. Oh, it could easily take a year just to write it.
That's tough.
Because it's, a zoning code is the law, and you don't go changing law willy-nilly. You don't. I mean, I can draft policies all day long, but it's not gonna have a big impact necessarily what the law does, so. A land bank wouldn't take quite as long.
Is it hard to keep the green space that you're envisioning to actually happen in the development and building stage?
Well, if we adopt this as our policy, and they come in with something that's drastically different, we're gonna say no. Okay, incorporate the green space into this is part of it.
I remember when they were doing Interest Bank, and there was green space for blocks and blocks around there in the envisioning stage, and it all died.
No,
Was it too expensive or something like that?
I can't address that one, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I mean, if they had green space around Interest, it'd be a whole different story.
You know, I really liked your pointing out Delano, that turnaround.
Yeah, the roundabout.
That it slows down the traffic. So that's Douglas, a main part of town, and and yet traffic is safe for everybody, they're slowed down. That's pivotal to safe everything. Keeping people safe from cars has to do with everybody slowing down.
And the angle-
I speak as an impatient driver.
Bike
I
rider.
need help.
Yeah. But the
Slow
angled
down.
parking along there helps kind of chill things down a little bit.
Watch out for the scooters, Jay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Very good. Any questions you have for us based off?
No,
of-
just that at some point I'm gonna need a recommendation, if I can get it, to take forward when we, but of course, we have to go to all of the dads. We're gonna have an open house at the library in April, and so people can come see it again. They won't see this presentation, it'll be an open house, it'll have posters and up, and people can just talk to staff about it, so for those of you that are familiar,
So, the proposed areas, are you gonna be choosing, like, some of those areas as like pilots, or like if we get a different zone adopted, would you be attacking all of the areas? Or were those just presented as examples of what change, you know?
yeah,
areas?
those are examples that the consultant came up with. They actually had a few more, and we had to kind of trim it back a little bit. Because they would have like, Oliver, Hillside, they had them every intersection because they were all potential places. Now, obviously, if you have 17th and Hillside, you're not gonna have 19th and Hillside too. It's just not, that's not gonna work that way. But these were just areas that they thought had good potential.
Are you open to, public suggestions on particular areas if this moves forward, you know, like what the public would like to see as an area for a pedestrian walk, you know?
Well, we'll go to all of the DABs. We're gonna have a developer forum that has yet to be scheduled. We'll have the open house at the library, so if you have other suggestions on how we can get the word out, you know, we've got a group of people that can come out and talk about it to get the word out to people. We, of course, use our social media at the city, and it's pretty effective, but these people still have to show up.
Yeah. I was just thinking of, like you said, 17th and Hillside. In my mind, I don't see that area needing anything, but I come further north and on 21st and Hillside, and I can imagine a parking garage there easily. We get a lot of complaints about on-site parking all the time in the neighborhood, so parking garage is a lot.
Again, the city won't actually pick which areas get it. It's the development community that we have to partner with. That's why we're having a development forum to let them try to see this differently than just trying to stick a suburban thing into an area and then they don't do it. They can't do it.
Mary, can I mix the two conversations? So are you asking there's an opportunity where the public will get to talk to the proposed developers to give input? Is that kind of where that's going?
Whoever is running the show on suggested areas to develop, not the developers.
Well, you know, eventually what happens, this goes to the planning commission, they conduct a public hearing, and people show up and sign up to speak, and they can address anything in there they want, and if they have a suggestion on where a good spot would be that maybe isn't identified in here, they can put that in, and it goes into the record. But again, just because a particular intersection is identified doesn't mean that the one north of it is out. It doesn't. We just tried to spread this out across this area pretty evenly. And it was just, you know, it's a consultant from Kansas City. They don't know the city the way residents do. And
How long a time do you expect we will have this code showing and hearings that bring it to a point?
if I experience no hiccups, maybe by the end of, June. Yeah, because it still has, yeah, once it's done with planning commission, then it goes to city council, county commission. They both have to bless it. So, keep my fingers crossed.
Staff meeting is going to?
It is, and I only found out about it Friday. I actually had you guys scheduled for sometime in April, and so. Well, not after, during the time of the dabs, we'll also do a developer forum. I don't have it scheduled yet. And then we'll have an open house at the library, the new advanced learning library. Unless somebody invites me to come in and talk to a group, I'm happy to do that too.
Blow out the room at the library?
Well, we often
Almost too
do.
small.
Huh?
Almost too small.
What do you think? For an open house, just coming and going? It'll be good. Anyway.
Since the meeting in that room is not a big room, when you get it full of people.
If you have all three rooms?
Oh, okay.
I don't have all three rooms, but I don't need it, but, yeah.
I think we
And
got,
really, if it was overly successful, wouldn't that be fabulous, because then we just schedule another one.
So the city just is putting out a vision, and you're inviting developers to make your vision happen?
Yes,
That's basically what
that's
this
their
is?
business.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay,
Mhm.
okay. And you're gonna make zoning easier if they want to buy into your vision?
That's right.
And then will the community still have an opportunity to know what's going into their neighborhoods? Like, we have developers come to these meetings and say, well, I plan to do such and such. Will we still have that opportunity?
Well, we're still working that out, because that is the rub, isn't it? If we speed it up for them, how do we keep the neighborhood informed? Okay, but if you buy into this, they're not gonna get anything speedy unless they're doing this. And if you've already said yes to this, then we're good.
any other comments, questions?
One last comment, my only follow-up to kind of just to piggyback on what she's saying is that, just general, because basically we have just general information as of right now. But if the whole entire concept is to transform, neighborhoods just like this one, to prevent people from having to go way out to wherever to shop or wherever to get groceries or wherever to even recreate for that matter. If that is to help grow neighborhoods just like this, which has always been one of my visions, is why do I have to go way out to east side just to do whatever? But if that's the concept, then I would be for it, but all I have is, general information. And so developers, we know at the end of the day, it's up to them on where they want to spend their money. And so what we have found is, especially when you use WSU, the money goes, not west, the money goes east. So everything WSU and east, but nothing comes west. And so, for me, one of my major concerns is, I know we say 17th and Hillside, but let's just be honest. All of the development, everything that happens as far as WSU goes east, everything back that way, nothing back this way. And so that's what I would like to see, because I believe we're at a place right now where we have given up on this neighborhood. And we use the same excuses. Well, they want support, well, they blah, blah, blah. Well, Field of Dreams said if you build it, they'll come. Well, how do we not know if we don't do it? If we don't try. And so, again, that's my only 2 cents. It's very hard to support something when you know from historically, there's nothing been input into 17th and the Hillside and nowhere else around here, unless it has to do with WSU. And so that's, to me, just getting down to brass tacks.
I agree.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
She needs a recommendation. She needs
If you're ready tonight, if you're not, that's
She
fine.
needs something kind of like you did with the scooter. She needs something.
If you think you're ready, fine. If not, I can always come back. Cause I'll be back here next month for the Northeast Heights.
If anybody actually feels comfortable enough to make a recommendation, I'd be happy to go ahead and accept it, but otherwise I don't sure we're there.
Get the community in here before you do it.
But
But you could recommend that. You could recommend that.
I propose a motion to recommend further.
No, we don't have to. All we have to do is provide feedback. That's all they ask for. And we've done
Actually,
that.
your agenda has a typo, and she said it when she came to present, that she would like some form of recommendation, even if it's not your final. So you could ask for her to come back or more input. She said that when she stood up there, you guys.
Right.
So I propose a motion to require more data and more concrete information,
Okay.
before we can actually make a full.
And I really do encourage you, all those maps have the website for the entire plan. And trust me, your eyes will get tired reading it, cause there's a lot in there. I mean, just the first section on vision, which has all the statistical stuff.
I'd be more interested in what's proposed, as far as zoning goes.
Say that again?
Implementation plan.
Implementation plan as well as, the actual proposed zoning changes. That's
Well,
what
no,
I'm
we're not
interested in.
proposing any zoning changes, okay? We're not. I know this gets confusing. The plan is recommending that we look at zoning. That's all it's saying. It has some suggestions on what you might do, but this doesn't change zoning. It just says, look at it, because it's getting in your way.
So would you be able to carry out this plan with the current zoning as it is?
No.
Then it's actually recommending zoning changes. Just because you didn't say it doesn't mean that's not what it's.
Well, it's saying, look at your zoning, because you can't make this happen without some changes. And then, of course, the zoning, because it's a law, it goes through the whole public hearing process. Yeah.
So, if we were to go ahead and ask for information to come back, so if the only more specificity that we're gonna get on zoning is that, hey, we're gonna go look at zoning, I'm not sure why we couldn't actually make a recommendation on that tonight, if we're not gonna get any more detail.
What'd you say?
If we were to go ahead and ask them to come back at a later point in time and tell us more,
That's
if.
what I just proposed.
But no, I know, but as it relates to zoning, if the only thing that they're going to, if we're not gonna get any more specificity other than we're gonna go look at zoning with the city, I'm not sure what a delay actually benefits us.
But if you're looking at zoning, doesn't that imply something's gonna happen?
Well, they've already got phone
Yes,
calls in
that
terms of.
implies something else.
So let's just be honest. So they've already got phone calls in terms of what people wanna do. That information has not been exposed. Okay, do we really wanna just get down to brass tacks? That information has not been exposed in this week. So there's an idea that the city has that certain developers wanna do certain things, and they just need our approval to back what they wanna do. And so every day our board gets to say, hey, we agree, let's go ahead and look at zoning, but it's not gonna benefit us. And that's my honest opinion, it's not gonna benefit us, it's only going to benefit them. And that's, so if we wanna make a motion to look at it, that's what's gonna happen at the end of the day. So, let's make a motion and.
I would like to point out what this plan is trying to do. I mean, if you read the description down here, it's a plan that focuses on redevelopment of the established core area. Makes it, a place for people as opposed to cars. That's what this plan is focusing on doing, and I agree with that plan. I think that's a great way to look at it, making our neighborhoods, our city more bikeable, more walkable, more person-centric. And so I agree with this plan. I think that, it has my approval to continue.
Okay, so let's make a motion, and you make a motion, and then we'll vote on the motion.
There is a motion on the floor.
Would you repeat the motion for me, please?
Can I say something? Can you, is there something in there that we can get the information out to the public as well?
You gotta amend it, I think, in their rules.
Do me
Okay,
a
well,
favor.
just restate yours.
Do-
Okay.
Unless, Camila, do you already have the motion written down?
I wrote require more data and concrete information before a vote, and then you guys had discussion before there was a second.
So there's a motion with no second right now.
Is there a second to the motion?
Okay, repeat the motion one more time for me.
Require more data and concrete information before a vote.
Second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Is there any conversation on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move forward. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Raise,
Is that 4, 5?
all those opposed, same sign.
And your vote counts, so are you not voting?
I'm gonna vote no.
My vote doesn't count. Yours does.
So I would ask, you want more data on what and more specificity on what?
I already felt my part, anybody else? Oh, well, let me be more specific. I was asking for more, solidification on the zoning changes, cause it doesn't.
We don't know what the zoning changes are. We
But
don't
if it
know what
gets
they are, we just know we have to change them.
And then, yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to see more, some feedback after the developers meeting,
Oh, sure.
make that sequence.
And if you're gonna look at zones, and there's obviously some zones that you're looking at, and so that would be a starting point. If the zone is just to go from single dwelling to ADUs, that's a zone change, right?
Well, no, not really. No, when we look at we're looking at the zoning requirements.
Okay.
Okay, like, how close can a structure be to the street or to the property line? Those kind of standards that we have. And the the consultant gave us an example of how we might approach it. But
would
that's as far as it goes.
And would it also affect the type of businesses that are moving into those areas, or you're just talking about?
It does in a way because it really promotes mixed use, having retail on one level and then maybe housing above, which we don't do a lot of. We do have some of that in Old Town, but they drafted their own zoning classification. They customized it, and that was approved. This would simply make that kind of thing a little more, speedier.
My recommendation, the next time we get a chance to see it, or next time it gets talked about, would be more specificity on the land bank.
Oh, sure.
I
Yes.
think that would be helpful. Question, I guess, to the board about, do you have any thoughts specifically about the ADUs? The small houses in your backyard?
A 30-minute class in mixed-use land use. You need about a 30-minute class in what mixed use is. You didn't get that, and you lost, and you don't know it, but that's what you need, is about a 30-minute class in mixed use. Jane Jacobs all over the place. They need to know what that is, and I know they don't know it, because it hasn't been around for 30 years.
So, same question, is there any input we actually have on that, or is there other more specific information on ADUs that we want to get?
And mine is just in general. I mean, we just saw businesses push back, greenery, but what businesses are gonna go in those?
Yeah, we won't get any of that through this discussion at all. So this is like a precursor
But
before.
the initial landfill, urban infill meetings, they talked about those things. They talked about what communities want. They talked about what's missing.
Sure, but I think from a city perspective, my guess is that the only thing they're doing is trying to set the stage for companies, developers to go ahead and want to invest in our town so that we can actually have more people in areas so that maybe you don't have to drive to the east because there's enough people in the area to go ahead and support your grocery store or whatever it is. I think that's the goal.
That's exactly, and that's what a comprehensive plan does, and this is an amendment to that plan. This, next month, I'll come back and I'll talk about an amendment to the comp plan having to do with northeast Wichita, which is a 1 square mile area right at Oliver and 21st. You will see specific recommendations in that thing.
And that's what we wanted to see.
You can't see, that is not what this does.
Okay. Great. But they piggyback on each other, correct?
Well, they're just different levels of detail. You can't take 62 square miles and drill down to every corner. I mean, you just can't. And if you took a peek at our comp plan today, it's even more 30,000 feet above sea level kind of look. But he's right. This sets the stage so the developers know what direction we're going, and that we want to take some of our regulations and get them out of the way with what they want to do, because they know there's market demand.
I've got another question. Would the plan disincentivize development on the margins?
Well, it doesn't apply out there. No, it does not. It doesn't apply out there. That's, if we go with the parallel zoning, that stuff will still take place.
Okay.
But hopefully somebody will take a chance on what's in here, and maybe they'll do a little bit less of that and a little bit more of this.
And the proposed changes will make it easier for them to come in and make those changes in the core.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments, questions? And again, last chance, any other questions of us?
No, I have down here though, ADUs, the land bank, better examples and definitions on mixed use. Anything else that I could focus on?
Green space, slowing traffic, walkability, are those official building ideas?
I'm sure she'll take it.
What else did you say,
talked
Jane?
about parallel zones.
Walkability,
Uh-huh.
green space.
So it would allow, basically she talked about the
Jane, I'll show you the
ability for
PowerPoint.
higher
Show
density
some of that
at
for you.
major
I'll show you the
intersections.
PowerPoint.
And that,
Slowing down traffic.
Anything else?
Oh, slowing down.
Yeah, she showed
which is
some
yet to be
traffic,
defined.
yeah.
And then, so the developer would be able to go
Thank you.
and choose whichever is easier.
So I will jump in at the end. I didn't want to stifle conversation with the DAB. The reason that Mary is here, I talked to planning staff about what I was seeing, which you all hadn't seen yet, and recommended that we go out to District Advisory Board so that you all could hear what was coming, and with your knowledge of zoning that you all got from the training, give feedback to Mary on your thoughts and ideas. So as she said, there is no actual proposed zoning change in here. There are recommendations for development in the area which will require it, but they're not telling you what to do. So since you all have a copy of the zoning code in your books that you got, review that, review the information that you were just given, check out the website because it's on there, and then look at what do you think neighborhoods want to see for setbacks? What do neighborhoods want to see for development? When we looked at, we all were immersed in 21st and Oliver, so what was the intensity on the corner going into residential? What did that look like? What suggestions do you have for these regional centers, community cores, and neighborhood hubs? So think about everything that you've just heard. Look on the website, the knowledge that you have, the communities you represent, and then provide that feedback. And then when Mary comes back, you all have been more involved in those recommendations. Maybe even attend the planning session with the planning board and hear what they're saying. But I really wanted you all to have an opportunity to provide that feedback. I knew tonight you may not, and again, this is a very condensed version.
Yes.
This is more like a 3-hour presentation, and I know you don't want to be here till midnight again. So I did ask for a condensed version, which you all got. But again, check this out, read into it, give your feedback to Mary. You can CC me on that, because I want to make sure you all have some say in there. And every district advisory board is going to get this type of presentation and the same opportunity that you all had to give some input. So that's where tonight came from. The reason you just had a general overview is because this isn't done, but I felt like this was a good time for you all to hear it as it's being developed and before it's finalized.
Mary, one last question. Tell us again when that planning session is?
I'm sorry, which one?
The planning commission, when this goes to after the DABs.
Well, it depends when they want it. Right, no, this Thursday, I will ask a subcommittee to send it forward to them.
Okay.
If everything goes as planned, we would conduct a public hearing on May 9th. That would be the earliest we could possibly do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then we'll know by the next time we get a chance to get together what the update is, and maybe
Yeah.
we'll ask you if there's, okay, cool.
As a matter of fact, I think I might put this whole schedule online so that we can just, when we have to change it, we change it, because I've got it here, but look at all my writing. You can't see that part, but there's all this writing, and that's just since I drafted this. So, but that's how it goes. Anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
We are moving on to board agenda item number 9, updates, issues, and reports. Don, I think we just typically start on that side, so you're up first. Okay.
What?
You want to help me out with the neighborhood group that we met with?
Country Overlook.
Country Overlook. Country Overlook and Sleepy Hollow are considering a merger. We bring the two groups together and pick up us a little more area and perhaps bring a few more people into involvement. I don't know that that would involve the name change of the group to incorporate, thought the possibility might be Madonna Neighborhood Association. To the group, that would bring in the two borders of our other golf course. There's a possibility that wasn't really discussed. We're probably gonna get some feedback from my group and their group, and probably consider a meeting at some point in April, probably to make a vote to, or the community decide whether we should join forces. In the meantime, we have decided to join our cleanups. So probably do one day cleanup, but in the way that we have the same amount of dumpsters at our place and then dumpsters at their place that we had before, but just do it at the same time. That was the first effort we're gonna put together.
Cool.
Thank you.
The Grants Review Committee will meet this Wednesday at 3:00 p.m. in the City Hall boardroom. It is open to the public. So I wanted to share that information with you all. There's about $900,000 being given out to community organizations who are doing work in the areas of youth crime prevention and several other things as well. So I encourage you all to come out if you can. There's some great organizations applying for grants, doing amazing work for the city.
Very good. I don't think I have anything either.
On Tuesday, March 12th at 6 p.m. at ICT Launchpad, there's going to be a screening of a movie, a documentary, The Rape of Recy Taylor. And this is a documentary that exposes a legacy of physical abuse of Black women and reveals Rosa Parks' intimate role in Recy Taylor's story. It's going to be presented by the Wichita Branch NAACP and the Wichita Branch Youth Council. The ICT Launchpad is located at 1156 North Oliver. Doors are open at about 5:45, and the screening will start at 6. And immediately following, there will be a panel, a discussion, again, talking about rape and disparity. And the panel is going to be community leaders, and so we invite everybody out, and it should be a good time to have a real dialogue about this issue. Oh, and recommended ages for the screening is high school age and up.
Can you share the date one more time?
The date again.
Oh, Tuesday, March 12th, 6 p.m. at the ICT Launchpad, 1156 North Oliver.
Back to you, sir.
All right, you all have a handout for the 2019 adopted budget. Review that. There's more information online, but we wanted to make sure you all had that. This Friday, 3 of us council members will be heading to Washington, D.C. 3 more will come Monday. We're going for National League of Cities. Tuesday and Wednesday, we will be meeting with our federal electeds and department heads on the national level to further advance some of the projects we have in the city. So the North Junction, I haven't seen the list of things we're gonna talk to them about just yet, but we will be in DC for 5-6 days talking to them. Last year was a very productive trip. As you all have been hearing kind of more about Amtrak, we did meet with Amtrak last year, so we were able to push a little bit, and that's coming closer and closer into fruition here in Wichita. So we'll be out there trying to make sure that we are lobbying for the needs of our city. Also, I sent an email to all of you. I got a reply from the majority of you. So tomorrow, I will be reappointing our DAB board members. So that will happen. You'll get notification from city manager's office, I believe Janet Johnson, once that happens sometime in the next couple weeks. Normally, I think that's a letter signed by the mayor and everything you got last time, so that will happen. Also, again, on this Places for People, just continue to look at the zoning, give some ideas. I really wanted you all to have opportunity on feedback on that. And that also brings up, and why some of this got rushed, the retreat I told you about. I wanted to give you some dates, let us know if these dates work for you, but I figured Saturdays were easier for most of us. So April 6th, 20th, or 27th. Can't give you a location yet, but I know you'll love it if they confirm it. And for that retreat, we'll have a refresher of zoning, so we can talk about that again. And now you've heard Places for People, so that'll keep it fresh in your mind. And we also were going to set up, once I get this finalized, a possible tour of our district. So we'll go from the northern boundary to the southern boundary, all the areas in between. Just take a look around. Mr. Roseboro did that to me, and it was pretty eye-opening because I hadn't driven all of District 1 before I decided to try to get this position. And he showed me a lot of areas that definitely needed help. So we'll try to get a tour. That day we'll have that, have some light refreshments, refresher over zoning and other things with the city. So I think that'll be awesome. So let me know on those days. You can tell me tonight, or you can email Camila and I. Not the 6th? Okay.
We got scheduled out of town.
Okay.
What time are you thinking about for that?
So I was thinking afternoon. I didn't have a set time. Not morning. I know you don't want to get up early and
Soccer games.
But just look at your calendar and let us know. I think that would be an awesome opportunity. And I think that's what we did last year, was in either late March or early April for our training. But I think a yearly refresher over different things, and especially with these possible changes coming, to be good. The other thing that it was in Mary's presentation, but we didn't talk about, was opportunity zones. So as we talked about some deregulation, one of the things from the federal level in opportunity zones is pushing more deregulation to allow development. And there are many neighborhoods in District 1 that fall within opportunity zones. There are 4 opportunity zones in District 1. All of downtown is an opportunity zone. But also the Dunbar McAdams area, Innovation Campus going south towards Red Bud Trail, and it makes some interesting turns. I can see, it's online too, I'll send that to you, but there's a lot of neighborhood area in there. And part of their presentation, so 17th and Hillside, is an opportunity zone. So that's why a lot of this is all meshing right now, and why it's important that your feedback is heard. So a lot of things going on. I think that's all I have for you. Of course, tomorrow, coming up, you'll hear more about the baseball agreement that was in the newspaper. I've been hearing a lot about that personally, so make sure you pay attention to that meeting tomorrow. Be a lot of good information on that, and some other downtown opportunities for development. I think that's all I have. Do you all have any questions?
What's the acreage that we're supposed to provide to the baseball team?
The entire stadium site, was that 24 acres, I think?
I was half sleeping when I heard the mayor this morning.
Yeah, it's $1 an acre, and just going into that, some of the questions that I've received is why would we sell that land for $1 an acre? And one of the simple reasons is right now, if we built a bunch of development in the stadium on there, we don't get any tax benefit because we own it. So if we want the taxpayers to get some benefit back from that, and you're looking at multi-million-dollar investment, then that deal happens. One of the clauses in there that saves us as well is, should they not meet their agreement, we can buy it back for $24, the same price that they're buying it from us. So there's not a big risk there, because people have brought up Waterwalk or the Gander site, and even what happened on 13th and Oliver with Walmart. There are no situations where that can happen here. We won't be out of that money and that opportunity. So tomorrow that will get explained in much more detail. The mayor is talking more about that in detail as well. If you can't make the council meeting, definitely follow along online, and it'll be on there. And I'm sure you all saw the Century 2 recommendation.
Yep.
Build something new. They did not say to tear it down. They just said to build a new facility. So
They want a place where you're gonna build a convention center.
maybe so. But that's all I have.
Motion to adjourn?
Can you please read, the next DAB meeting will be held?
Yes, the next DAB meeting will be at the Advanced Learning Library. So we'll be down there in Tadana's area. And that was fun last year. It was a good meeting. We had microphones. Yeah. So we'll be down there. Looking forward to seeing everybody down there.
That'll be on April 1st.
Yep.
Okay.
I just want to say something fun. This is heavy. Our neighborhood association is trying out a scavenger hunt for the month of March. Our neighborhood is going to be searching for neighborhood markers. There'll be prizes. Stay tuned. It'll be a lot of fun.
Steak dinner.
Oh,
Very good. Is there a motion?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Who was the first?
Dan.
Tadana got it. All those in favor say aye.